We live in a world built on oil. It's the fuel in our cars, the plastic in our homes, the energy that powers our digital lives. It's the silent partner in the story of modern civilization, the engine of progress that lifted humanity to unprecedented heights. But this story of progress has a dark, unwritten chapter. A story of power, control, and conflict, hidden in plain sight. What if the biggest wars in history, the conflicts that define generations, were never truly about freedom, or democracy, or even terrorism, but about securing this one, single resource? What if the grand narratives we've been told were just a cover for a much simpler, more brutal truth? Follow the veins, and you follow the power. The intricate network of pipelines and tanker routes that crisscross our planet are more than just infrastructure. They are the arteries of the global economy. Control these arteries, and you control the lifeblood of nations. Every day, nearly 100 million barrels of crude oil are pulled from the earth and sent on a journey through these fragile, contested pathways. Each barrel represents a unit of energy, a unit of wealth, and a unit of geopolitical leverage. The flow must never stop, and the lengths to which nations will go to protect that flow or to disrupt it for their rivals are staggering. Because countries don't just fight over land, they fight over what lies underneath it. They wage shadow wars for the rights to explore, to drill, and to own the vast, unseen oceans of oil trapped miles beneath the surface. This isn't a battle fought with flags on hillsides. It's a battle of seismic surveys, drilling contracts, and backroom deals that redraw maps of influence. The 20th century was defined by the quest for this buried treasure, turning barren deserts and remote coastlines into the most valuable real estate on Earth. And, as the easy-to-reach reserves dwindle, the fight is moving to harsher, more dangerous frontiers, the crushing depths of the ocean and the fragile ice of the Arctic. Some say every major conflict of the last century leaves an oil trail, a trail of breadcrumbs leading back to a singular motive. From the redrawing of the Middle East after World War I, to the Suez Crisis, to the Iran-Iraq War, to the invasion of Kuwait. Look closely at the justifications, the alliances, the outcomes. Again and again, you find the invisible hand of oil interests, guiding decisions and shaping destinies. It's a pattern hidden behind official explanations. A secret history where the prize was never just territory, but the energy reserves required to power an empire. The question isn't whether oil was a factor. The question is whether it was ever the primary factor. And what happens when oil itself becomes a weapon? Not just the prize of war, but the instrument of it. This is the reality of the 21st century. We've seen embargoes used to cripple economies, sanctions designed to choke off revenue, and price wars engineered to bankrupt entire states. We've seen pipelines become targets of sabotage and vital shipping lanes turned into geopolitical flashpoints. In this new era of conflict, you don't need to send an army to bring a country to its knees. You just need to control the price of a barrel, or block a single strategic choke point like the Strait of Hormuz, through which a fifth of the world's oil passes every day. The global economy is balanced on a knife's edge, and oil is the weapon that can tip it into chaos. But this gets darker and far more complex. The secret war for oil isn't just fought with soldiers and missiles. It's fought in the world of high finance, with currencies and complex derivatives. It's fought with sanctions that give rise to clandestine shadow fleets of untraceable tankers operating outside of international law. It's fought over the petrodollar system, a a decades-old agreement that locks the entire global energy market to the US dollar, granting America an extraordinary and often invisible economic power. This financial architecture is as critical to global dominance as any aircraft carrier. It ensures that even countries without vast oil reserves can wield immense influence, simply by controlling the currency in which it's traded. This is the hidden battlefield, where the fates of nations are decided not by generals, but by traders and central bankers. And now, the rules of the game are changing once again. As the world attempts to pivot away from fossil fuels, a new resource war is beginning. The fight for oil is morphing into a fight for lithium, cobalt, and the rare earth metals that power our green future. New choke points are emerging, not in the Middle East, but in the salt flats of Chile and the mines of the Congo. At the same time, our insatiable hunger for data, for artificial intelligence, has created a new and unprecedented demand for energy, making data centers the new strategic assets. The board is being reset, but the game remains the same. Control the energy, and you control the world. By the end of this journey, you may see world history and its future completely differently. We will pull back the curtain on the deals, the conflicts, and the covert operations that shape our reality. From the tanker wars in the Persian Gulf to the pipeline politics of Europe, from the rise of the petrodollar to the dawn of the battery age. This is the story you were never meant to hear. Welcome to the secret oil wars no one talks about. In the early 1900s, a seismic shift occurred, not in the Earth's crust, but in its value. A thick black liquid, once a nuisance to water drillers, began to eclipse the allure of gold. This was petroleum, black gold, and it was about to rewrite the rules of human civilization. The dawn of the 20th century was the dawn of the internal combustion engine. Across the globe, a new mechanical heartbeat was sputtering to life, and it had an insatiable thirst. From the first automobiles rattling down cobblestone streets to the complex machinery powering new factories, engines drank it. This wasn't just a new fuel, it was liquid power, a concentrated form of energy that promised unprecedented speed, efficiency, and force. Empires, which had been built on coal, steam, and the might of their navies, suddenly saw a new strategic prize. The race was on. They chased it, not with the pickaxes of prospectors, but with the full weight of national ambition. The scent of oil was the scent of the future, and every major power wanted to control its source. No nation understood this shift more profoundly than Great Britain. As the undisputed master of the seas, its power was projected by the Royal Navy, a fleet powered by Welsh coal. But a visionary First Lord of the Admiralty, a young Winston Churchill, saw the writing on the wall. Coal was bulky, inefficient, and required huge crews of stokers working in hellish conditions. Oil offered a revolutionary advantage. It burned with twice the thermal efficiency, could be refueled at sea, and allowed for smaller crews and faster, more agile ship designs. The decision was monumental. Britain rewired its entire naval strategy, making the audacious bet to convert its fleet from coal to oil. In doing so, its fleets gained incredible speed and operational range. But they also gained a new, critical vulnerability, a ravenous hunger for a resource they did not possess. Britain had coal in abundance, but oil? That was located far away, in volatile regions, primarily in Persia, modern-day Iran. This single decision tethered the world's greatest naval power to the unstable politics of the Middle East, setting a precedent that would echo for a century. The consequences of this new dependence became brutally clear as the world plunged into conflict. The Great World Wars were not just fought with bullets and bombs, they ran on fuel. Oil was the lifeblood of modern warfare. It powered the tanks that blitzed across Europe, the planes that battled for control of the skies, and the ships that projected power across vast oceans. A nation's ability to wage war was now directly proportional to its ability to secure oil. Suddenly, the most critical battlegrounds weren't just on the front lines. They were the tanker convoys braving submarine-infested waters in the Atlantic and the remote desert wells of the Middle East. Supply lines decided the fate of empires. Germany's desperate push for the oil fields of the Caucasus and Japan's southern expansion to seize the oil of the Dutch East Indies were not side quests. They were strategic imperatives. The Allies, backed by the colossal output of the United States and control of Middle Eastern reserves, ultimately had the energy advantage. They could fuel their war machine longer and harder. The lesson was burned into the psyche of every global power. Control the oil, and you control the world. In the aftermath of the wars, the geopolitical map was redrawn, and its new center of gravity was not in London, Paris, or Washington, but in the vast, arid landscapes of the Arabian Peninsula. For centuries, these were lands of nomads and ancient cities, far from the centers of industrial power. But beneath the sand lay the largest, most accessible oil reserves ever discovered. Deserts became the world's power center, seemingly overnight. The geological lottery had been won by nations that, until then, had been on the periphery of global affairs. The world's industrial economies, from a recovering Europe to a booming America and Japan, were now utterly dependent on this region. The flow of oil from the Middle East became the planet's economic pulse. But it wasn't nations that first capitalized on this new reality. It was corporations. A consortium of Western oil giants, later known as the Seven Sisters, moved in. They possessed the capital, the technology, and the expertise to extract, refine, and transport this black gold on a global scale. Companies like the Arabian American Oil Company, or Aramco, struck deals that were unprecedented in scope. They built entire cities, ports, and pipeline networks in the desert, operating as virtual states within states. These corporations turned into kingmakers. They negotiated directly with monarchs and governments, their decisions capable of propping up regimes or starving them of revenue. The lines between corporate interest and national foreign policy blurred. The pursuit of profit and the pursuit of geopolitical dominance became one and the same, played out in boardrooms in New York and London, and in the royal courts of Riyadh. For decades, this arrangement held. A steady, cheap flow of oil fueled an unprecedented era of global economic growth. The West consumed, the corporations profited, and the oil-rich states collected their royalties. It seemed like a stable, if unequal, system. But the ground was shifting. The host nations, once junior partners, began to understand the true extent of their leverage. They saw the world's addiction and realized they controlled the supply. Then something changed. The power dynamic that had defined the post-war world was about to be shattered. The idea of oil as a simple commodity was ending. It was about to become a weapon. The invisible lines of corporate contracts were replaced by the hard, unyielding lines of national sovereignty. Borders hardened where pipelines ran. These conduits of steel, which snaked across deserts and mountains, were no longer just infrastructure. They were instruments of national power and symbols of geopolitical tension. Control over a pipeline meant control over a neighbor's economy. The ability to turn off a valve became a threat more potent than a military maneuver. Conflicts began to erupt not over ancient territorial disputes, but over the precise routes of these new arteries of power. This was the true beginning. The era where oil was not just a fuel for engines, but the primary fuel for global conflict. The age of oil had begun, and with it, the age of the oil wars. It would not be a single declared war, but a century of proxy conflicts, economic showdowns, and strategic gambles. It would define alliances, topple governments, and create unimaginable wealth while fueling instability. The world's map, once drawn by explorers and generals, would now be rewritten by the relentless, unforgiving logic of oil. 1973, an embargo. Pumps ran dry. Panic went global. One decision spiked prices and rocked economies. OPEC discovered leverage, and the world discovered dependence. Oil met money. The petrodollar system rewired global finance. Was the real battle about currency power? What happened next shocked markets. Inflation surged. Policy bent to energy. From then on, oil wasn't just fuel, it was leverage. Iraq. Was it only about weapons, or pipelines and reserves? Kuwait. Small borders, colossal stakes. Libya. Regime change meets energy politics. Syria. Beneath the war, a battle of roots. Why does oil appear every time? But nobody talks about this. Follow the infrastructure and the troops. Next, the places a single spark can stop the world. Tanker wars, ships hunted in choke points. Hormuz, the heartbeat of global energy. South China Sea, oil under contested waters. Arctic, a frozen frontier turns strategic. Africa, a silent front, rarely covered. Here's where the story turns. One incident here echoes on every receipt. Trade routes or battle lines, sometimes both. Oil funds war. Profits become payloads. Corporations versus nations. Who controls supply? Pipelines can become weapons. Coups and crude. Regimes rise and fall on reserves. The resource curse. Wealth without prosperity. Then something changed. Pressure rose. At the pump and in the streets. The fuse was lit for a bigger twist. What if oil is losing power? Electric fleets challenge oil empires. Lithium, the next oil. New dependencies, new deals. AI and energy. Data centers drink megawatts. Maybe oil wars were only chapter 1, and then came the twist. From wells to mines to mega factories, the battlefield moves. Power is changing hands. Again. Superpowers maneuver. America, China, Russia. No one wins. They survive. The people pay. Inflation, shortages, fear. Every war invoice reaches ordinary lives. Maybe oil controls everyone, but oil may not be the real prize. Control the flow, the finance, the choke point, and you control policy. And the bill keeps coming. Were we told the full story? What were these wars really about? If oil ends, what begins? Power is shifting from barrels to bytes. Was it ever about oil alone? But this gets darker. The next struggle may be hidden in plain sight. Watch the grids. We've journeyed through a century drenched in oil, a world built on its power and stained by the conflicts it fueled. But as we've seen, the secret oil wars were never just about fuel. They were about who controls civilization itself. It was a battle for the levers of the global economy, for the right to set the price, to dictate terms, and to hold the world hostage through a single, indispensable commodity. From the backroom deals that crowned the dollar as the king of energy transactions, creating the petrodollar machine, to the clandestine operations that kept the black gold flowing, this was a war fought not with armies in the open, but with tankers, traders, and spies in the shadows. Every barrel was a chess piece, every pipeline a strategic artery, and every choke point a potential checkmate. The entire architecture of modern power was constructed on this foundation of crude. We saw how fragile this system truly is. The world's economy, balanced on the edge of a knife, held captive by a few narrow strips of water. The Strait of Hormuz, the Suez Canal, the Bab el-Mandeb. These aren't just geographical features, they are the jugular veins of the industrial world. A single drone, a stray mine, or a political blockade in one of these choke points doesn't just stop a few ships. It triggers a global seizure. Insurance premiums skyrocket overnight. Supply chains snap. The intricate dance of global logistics grinds to a halt, and the shockwave is felt in every gas station, every factory, and every home across the planet. The tanker wars of the past were a brutal lesson in this vulnerability, and today, the threat has only evolved. Shadow fleets, operating outside the law, move sanctioned oil in a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, while nations use sanctions and price caps as weapons of economic warfare, turning the very act of compliance into a strategic battlefield. This is the hidden machinery of control, where a pen stroke in a distant capital can be as devastating as a missile strike at sea. And the players in this game are changing. The era of the Western supermajors holding absolute dominion is over. National oil companies, behemoths like Aramco and ADNOC, now control the vast majority of the world's proven reserves. Their priorities are not just shareholder profits, but national destiny, political influence, and long-term strategic dominance. They answer to governments, not to markets, fundamentally altering the calculus of power. This shift is mirrored in the very infrastructure of energy. Pipelines are no longer just conduits for fuel. They are instruments of steel diplomacy. A valve turned in one country can freeze another. The sabotage of a pipeline like Nord Stream becomes an act of undeclared war, a stark reminder that the physical world is still the ultimate arena of conflict. And new fronts are opening everywhere. From the untapped gas fields off the coast of Mozambique to the contested pipeline routes across the Sahel, Africa is emerging not as a passive resource provider, but as a critical nexus of future energy competition. Even the frozen north is no longer off limits, as melting ice in the Arctic opens new shipping lanes and access to deep-water reserves, drawing the world's great powers into a new Cold War. But the ground is shifting beneath our feet. The very definition of energy is expanding, and the next energy war may already have begun. It's a war fought not for barrels of oil, but for kilograms of lithium. Not for sprawling oil fields, but for concentrated cobalt mines in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The transition to a green economy isn't an escape from geopolitics. It's a jump from one geopolitical battlefield to another. The new choke points are not straits at sea, but mines in Chile, refineries in China, and the handful of nations that control the processing of rare earth elements. Whoever controls these new supply chains will control the future of transportation, technology, and renewable energy. At the same time, a new, invisible hunger is growing. The insatiable demand for data, driven by artificial intelligence and cloud computing, has created a new class of energy consumer: the data center. These digital factories consume megawatts of power on a scale comparable to entire cities, making the stability of the electrical grid a matter of national security. The geopolitics of semiconductors and the geopolitics of power are now inextricably linked. An attack on a nation's power grid could be the defining act of war in the 21st century. So if oil shaped the last century, what shapes the next? We stand at a precipice, looking out at multiple possible futures. A future of friction, where the old oil powers clash with the new mineral and tech powers in a chaotic, multipolar struggle. A future of fragmentation, where the world breaks into competing economic blocks, each with its own currency for energy pricing, the yuan, the euro, the dollar, and its own secure supply chains. Or a future of reset, where the sheer scale of the climate and energy challenge forces an unprecedented level of global cooperation. The path we take is not yet written. The board is being reset, the pieces are in motion, and the stakes have never been higher. The world is more complex than they teach in school. The real forces that shape our lives operate in the shadows, in the grey zones between diplomacy and war. If you want to understand the hidden geopolitics that define our present and will determine our future, subscribe to our channel. We peel back the layers to reveal the machinery of power. Because the most important wars are often the ones nobody calls wars. They are the silent struggles for control over resources, technology, and the fundamental systems that run our world. See you in the next chapter, where we dive deep into the new battlefield. Watch the next episode, the lithium supply chain and the battle for the resource that no one truly controls.